Jake Morrison stood in the center of the massive chamber, his black uniform sharp against the curved walls that stretched high above him. The Galactic Council Hall was built to make visitors feel small, and it worked. Hundreds of alien beings filled the tiered seats around him, their strange forms casting weird shadows under the blue lights. For 3 years, Jake had walked these halls as Earth's ambassador. He knew every corner, every face, every voice. The tall, four-armed Zalkari with their hissing speech. The blue-skinned aquatic people who needed water tanks to breathe. The rock-like hegemony members who moved slowly but thought even slower. They had all been friends once. Today felt different. The air was thick with tension, and Jake could see it in their eyes. Fear, anger, something had changed, and he had a bad feeling about what was coming. High Counselor Vexthal rose from his seat, his forearms spreading wide. The Zalkari was tall, even by his species standards, with dark green skin and yellow eyes that never seemed to blink. His voice came through the translation device as a cold hiss. "We gather today to address serious charges against the human species," Vexthal announced. His words echoed through the chamber, and Jake felt his stomach drop. "The humans have broken the sanctuary accords by placing military bases near protected worlds." Jake's aide, Danny Collins, stepped closer and whispered, "Sir, those aren't military bases. They're research stations. We have all the permits." Jake nodded, but kept his face calm. He had learned long ago that showing emotion in this chamber was seen as weakness. The aliens valued control above all else, even when they were about to destroy everything good they had built together. "The humans have also refused to share their quantum drive technology," continued Vexthal. "They keep their most advanced science for themselves while demanding access to our biosynthesis data and medical archives." More lies. Jake remembered the countless meetings where human scientists had offered to share their knowledge. The aliens had always found excuses to delay or demand more information about human capabilities first. They wanted to study humanity's technology before allowing humans to see theirs. The aquatic delegate Morden rose from his water-filled seat, his blue skin glistening under the lights. "The humans have also shown aggressive expansion into sectors that should remain neutral. Their fleet movements suggest preparation for conquest rather than exploration." Jake almost laughed. Aggressive expansion. 3 years ago, the Void Reapers had attacked the Outer Rim. The alien fleets had been destroyed in hours. Only Captain Lisa Harper's human task force had been able to stop them, saving billions of lives across 12 worlds. The aggressive expansion was humanity building defense stations to protect everyone from the next attack, but the truth didn't matter now. Jake could see it in their faces. This wasn't about broken accords or technology sharing. This was about fear. Fear of being left behind by a species that had achieved in decades what they had failed to do in centuries. "Ambassador Morrison," Vexthal's voice cut through his thoughts. "How do you answer these charges?" Jake looked around the chamber. 3 years of friendship, cooperation, and shared victories. 3 years of human doctors saving alien lives, human engineers solving problems that had stumped entire civilizations, human soldiers dying to protect worlds that weren't even their own. He thought about Dr. Amy Foster, who had worked for months to cure the Zalkari plague. She had barely slept, pushing herself to save millions of lives. The same Zalkari who were now calling humans dangerous. He thought about Colonel Beth Martinez, who had trained alien security forces and helped them defend against raiders. She had shared human military knowledge freely, asking nothing in return. Except cooperation. He thought about the quantum communicators that kept the galaxy connected, the fusion reactors that powered alien cities, the medical technology that had doubled life expectancy on 6 different worlds. All human gifts to their supposed allies. "The charges are false," Jake said simply. "The installations are research stations approved by your own environmental committee. The technology sharing delays come from your demands for detailed military specifications before allowing basic scientific exchange." The fleet movements are defensive preparations against Void Reaper return, as recommended by our joint security analysis. Vexthal's yellow eyes narrowed. Do you deny that humanity seeks to dominate the galaxy? I deny that humanity seeks anything except peaceful cooperation and mutual defense, Jake replied. We have proven this through 3 years of service to this council. The chamber buzzed with alien voices speaking in dozens of languages. Jake caught fragments through the translation network. They were afraid of human advancement, afraid of being seen as inferior, afraid of losing their positions as the galaxy's leaders. The hegemony representative, a massive being made of living stone, spoke in his rumbling voice. The humans advance too quickly. They solve problems we have studied for generations in mere months. They build ships that outclass our finest designs. They fight battles we cannot win. This is not natural, not natural. Jake understood now. It wasn't about the Sanctuary Accords or technology sharing. It was about pride. These species had ruled the galaxy for thousands of years. They had built the council, created the laws, maintained the peace, and then humans had arrived and done everything better. The vote will now be taken, Vexthal announced. All in favor of expelling humanity from the Galactic Council for violations of the Sanctuary Accords and aggressive expansion. The voting began. Green lights appeared across the chamber as species after species voted against humanity, the Zelkari, the aquatic collective, the hegemony, the insectoid swarm, the crystal beings. One by one, they chose fear over friendship. Jake watched the board fill with green lights. 97 votes in favor. Only 3 against from the small species that relied heavily on human protection and trade. The motion passes, Vexthal declared. Humanity's membership in the Galactic Council is revoked, effective immediately. All human personnel must be removed from Council territories within 30 standard days. All trade agreements are terminated. All cultural exchange programs are ended. The chamber fell silent. Jake felt Danny tense beside him, but he kept his own face calm. He had expected this. The signs had been there for months. The whispered conversations that stopped when humans entered the room, the delays in approving human projects, the sudden reluctance to share intelligence about Void Reaper movements. Jake gathered his papers slowly, taking his time. He looked around the chamber one last time, meeting the eyes of beings he had once called friends. The Zelkari scientist who had worked beside human researchers, the aquatic diplomat who had shared meals with human ambassadors, the hegemony engineer who had learned new techniques from human teachers. They all looked away. Jake picked up his briefcase and walked toward the exit, his footsteps echoing in the silent chamber. Danny followed, along with the other human staff members. They said nothing. What was there to say? At the door, Jake paused and looked back. Vexthal was still standing, his forearms folded across his chest. The other aliens sat in their seats. Avoiding eye contact, the silence stretched on. Good luck, Jake said quietly. Then he turned and walked out. The door closed behind him with a soft hiss. In the corridor, Danny finally spoke. Sir, what do we do now? Jake continued walking toward the transport bay. We go home, Danny. We pack up everything we brought to this place. Every piece of technology, every medical device, every defense system, we take it all back to Earth. And then? Jake stopped and looked out through the transparent walls at the stars beyond. Somewhere out there, the Void Reapers were waiting. Somewhere out there, the galaxy was about to learn what it had lost. Then we wait, Jake said. We wait and see how long it takes them to realize their mistake. They walked away in silence, leaving behind 3 years of friendship and cooperation. Behind them, the Galactic Council began to discover the true cost of their fear. Colonel Beth Martinez stood on the observation deck of Kepler Station, watching the loading bay through the thick glass. Teams of human workers moved with practiced efficiency, packing 3 years of equipment into transport containers. The station that had been humanity's crown jewel in the Andromeda sector was being stripped down to its bare bones. Ma'am, the Zelkari are asking about the atmospheric processors again. reported Lieutenant Ryan Hayes, approaching with a data pad in his hands. The young officer looked tired. They had been working around the clock for 2 weeks ever since. The expulsion order came through. What about them? Beth asked, not taking her eyes off the loading operation below. They want us to leave them behind. They say the processors are part of the colony infrastructure now and should stay with New Desha. Beth turned to face the lieutenant. Her expression was cold and professional. Negative, we built those processors. We designed them, we installed them. They come with us. But ma'am, without them, the colony will lose its breathable atmosphere. In 6 months, 20 million Zalkari live there? Not our problem anymore, Lieutenant. They voted us out. They can figure out how to make their own atmospheric processors. Ryan looked uncomfortable, but he nodded and made a note on his pad. Beth understood his feelings. For 3 years, they had worked alongside these aliens, solving their problems, protecting their worlds. It felt wrong to leave them helpless. But the Zalkari had made their choice, down in the medical bay. Dr. Amy Foster supervised the removal of equipment that had treated over 10,000 alien patients. The advanced surgical units, the biosynthesis chambers, the genetic therapy devices, all of it was being carefully packed and prepared for transport back to Earth. Dr. Foster, her assistant called out. The Aquatic Collective is asking if we can leave the synthesis blueprints behind. They say they need them to continue treating their population. Amy paused in her work, holding a medical scanner in her hands. She thought about the aquatic children she had treated, the ones with the rare genetic condition that would have killed them without human intervention. She thought about the plague that had swept through their outer colonies, and how she had worked day and night to develop a cure. No, she said finally, they wanted us gone. They can manage their own medical problems now. The assistant looked surprised. But doctor, people will die without those treatments. People die every day, Amy replied, her voice steady. The Aquatic Collective decided they didn't want human help anymore. We're respecting their wishes? In the engineering section, Chief Engineer Carl Roberts was overseeing the removal of the fusion reactors that powered the entire station. The aliens had built the station's basic structure, but every advanced system was human-made. The gravitational field generators, the quantum communication arrays, the defensive shields. All of it was coming out. Sir, one of his technicians called out. The hegemony engineers are asking for the technical specifications for the reactor core. They say they need to understand the systems to maintain them. Carl laughed bitterly. Maintain them? We're taking the reactors with us? Let them figure out how to power their stations with their own technology. The technician looked confused. But sir, without these reactors, half the stations in this sector will go dark. The mining operations, the research facilities, the defense platforms. Should have thought of that before they voted us out, Carl replied, continuing to supervise. The careful removal of the reactor components. We offered to share this technology with them dozens of times. They always said they needed to study it first, make sure it was safe. Well, now they can study it all they want from the outside. Captain Sam Rodriguez stood on the bridge of the transport vessel New Horizon, coordinating the evacuation of human personnel from 17 different stations across the sector. His ship was one of 40 vessels involved in the withdrawal, all working together to bring every human citizen and every piece of human technology back to Earth space. Captain, his communications officer reported, we're receiving urgent messages from the Zalkari High Command. They're asking for a meeting about the atmospheric processors. Tell them we're busy, Sam replied. We have a 30-day deadline to meet. Sir, they're offering to pay compensation for the processors. They say they'll give us full access to their biosynthesis archives. Sam turned to look at the officer. The same archives they've been refusing to share for 3 years? The ones they said were too dangerous for humans to access? Yes, sir. Tell them the offer is rejected. Everything we brought to this sector goes back to Earth, no exceptions. On the screen, Sam could see the final transport leaving Kepler Station. The once bustling hub of human activity was now just an empty shell. The aliens could have the basic structure, But everything that made it useful was gone. Dr. Helen Cross, who had been the head of the Human Galactic Trade Commission, was coordinating the withdrawal of human businesses from alien worlds. The trading posts, the manufacturing facilities, the research centers, all of it was being shut down and moved. "Ma'am," her assistant Kevin Baker reported, "the insectoid swarm is asking about the mining equipment on Kepler-7. They say the operation is too important to shut down." Helen looked up from her paperwork. "Important to whom?" "They process 70% of the rare metals for this sector. Without those metals, ship production will drop by half." "Then they should have built their own mining operation," Helen replied. "We offered to sell them the technology years ago. They said they preferred to let humans do the work while they managed the distribution. What should I tell them?" "Tell them the mining operation is closed. If they want rare metals, they can dig them out themselves." The withdrawal was total and complete. Human schools that had educated alien children were emptied. Human hospitals that had treated alien patients were stripped of their equipment. Human farms that had fed alien populations were abandoned. Human security forces that had protected alien worlds were recalled. Lieutenant Colonel John Davis had been training alien security forces for 2 years. His human instructors had taught them tactics, weapons handling, and strategic thinking. Now he was pulling all of his people out. "Sir," one of his sergeants asked, "what about the training programs? Some of these aliens are only half-trained. They won't be able to handle serious threats." "Not our responsibility anymore, Sergeant," John replied. "They wanted independence from human influence. They're about to get it." The aliens watched the human withdrawal with growing concern. What had seemed like a simple political decision was becoming a practical disaster. They were losing doctors, engineers, teachers, and protectors all at once. Systems that had worked perfectly for 3 years were suddenly failing without human maintenance. Captain Rodriguez received a final transmission from the Galactic Council as his ship prepared to leave the sector. It was from High Counselor Vexel himself. "Captain Rodriguez, we request that you delay your departure. We need time to arrange for the transfer of critical systems." Sam looked at the message for a long moment, then composed his reply. "Hi, Counselor, our withdrawal is proceeding on schedule. All human personnel and technology will be removed within the 30-day deadline as ordered. We wish you success in your future endeavors." He closed the channel without waiting for a response. On the view screen, he could see the last human transport leaving the sector. Behind them, alien stations began to go dark as they're human-built. Power systems shut down for lack of maintenance. The message spread quickly through human space. Earth's government issued a formal statement, effective immediately. All human technology patents, research data, and military assistance agreements with former Galactic Council members are revoked. All human personnel are withdrawn from Council territories. All trade agreements are terminated. The humans had walked away in silence, taking with them everything that had made galactic civilization work. The aliens were about to discover just how much they had depended on the species they had feared and rejected. In the depths of space, something else was stirring. The Void Reapers had been quiet for 3 years, held back by human-designed detection systems and defense networks. But those systems were failing now, their human operators gone, their technology shutting down. The galaxy was about to learn the true cost of its decision. 6 months after the human withdrawal, the first cracks began to show. On the mining world of Kepler-7, the massive extraction operation that had processed 70% of the sector's rare metals ground to a halt. The human-built gravitational manipulators that lifted or from deep planetary cores had stopped working, without human technicians to maintain them. The complex systems had simply failed. Mining Director Kextool of the Hegemony stood in the empty control room, staring at the dark screens. His rock-like form cast long shadows in the dim emergency lighting. For 3 years, this facility had run smoothly, producing the materials needed for ship construction across 16 star systems. Now it was just another dead facility, sir. His assistant rumbled in the slow speech of their people. The gravitational cores are completely offline. Our engineers cannot understand the human technology. Kextool had tried to keep the operation running with traditional mining methods, but it was hopeless. The rare metals were buried too deep, under too much pressure. Only the human gravity manipulators could reach them safely. Without those machines, the entire galactic economy was beginning to collapse. "Send a message to the other facilities," he ordered. "Tell them we are shutting down indefinitely." Similar scenes played out across the galaxy. The Zelkari terraforming project on Nuvesha was failing as their atmospheric processors broke down. The massive machines that converted toxic gases into breathable air were incredibly complex. Human engineers had designed them to work for decades, but they needed regular maintenance and updates. Chief Engineer Vexmar stood outside the failing processor complex, watching thick yellow smoke pour from the exhaust vents. The smoke meant the filters were clogged and the chemical balance was wrong. In a few weeks, the atmosphere would become poisonous again. "Can we repair it?" he asked his team. "We have tried, sir," replied his lead technician. "The human systems are too advanced. We cannot understand how they work. We need the original designers." Vexmar thought about the 20 million Zelkari who lived on this world. They had been here for only 5 years since the successful terraforming project had made the planet livable. Now they might all have to evacuate. "Send a message to the evacuation fleet," he ordered. "Tell them to prepare for full planetary evacuation." The medical crisis hit the aquatic collective even harder. Dr. Mortal floated in his treatment center. Surrounded by patients he could no longer help. The human-designed biosynthesis machines that created specialized medicines had stopped working. Without them, diseases that had been easily treatable were becoming deadly again. "Doctor," his assistant called out, "the synthesis chambers are producing contaminated medicine again. 3 patients have died from the bad batches." Mortal felt the weight of failure pressing down on him. The machines were supposed to be foolproof. Human Dr. Amy Foster had spent months training his staff to use them. But without human oversight, something was going wrong. The complex chemical processes were producing poison instead of medicine. "Shut down all synthesis operations," he ordered. "We will have to use traditional treatments only." Traditional treatments that had a 30% success rate instead of the 90% they had achieved with human technology. Mortal watched as his patients suffered, knowing that many would die who could have been easily saved just months before on Earth. Director Helen Cross sat in her office at the new Independent Human Trade Center, reading reports from across the galaxy. Her desk was covered with messages from former council members, each one more desperate than the last. "Ma'am," her assistant Kevin Baker reported, "we have received formal requests from 14 different species asking to purchase quantum drive technology." Helen looked up from the reports. "What did you tell them?" "That our technology is no longer available for export as per your instructions." "Good. What else?" "The hegemony is offering to pay triple the standard rate for gravitational manipulators. They say their entire mining industry is collapsing." Helen smiled grimly. "Tell them we appreciate their offer, but we are no longer in the business of selling technology to species that consider us a threat. The Aquatic Collective is requesting emergency medical supplies. They say they are facing a pandemic without the synthesis machines." "Not our problem anymore, Kevin. They voted us out of the council. They can handle their own medical emergencies." The most critical failure came when the Void Reapers returned, the biomechanical entities from the dark. Space beyond the galaxy had been held back for 3 years by human-designed early warning systems. A network of sensors and automated defense platforms had watched the galaxy's borders, ready to sound the alarm if the Reapers tried to return, but the network was failing. Without human maintenance, the sensors were going offline one by one. The defense platforms were running out of ammunition and fuel. The quantum communication systems that linked everything together were breaking down. Admiral Rexthul of the Zelkari fleet received the first attack report at 0300 hours. The border world of Kexmar had gone silent. Their last transmission had been a frantic warning about strange ships appearing in their system. "Sir, his communications officer reported. "We are receiving a distress signal from Kexmar. They are under attack by unknown vessels." Rexville looked at the star charts. Kexmar was a heavily defended world with a full battle fleet. What could attack them so quickly that they barely had time to send a warning? "Prepare the fleet for immediate departure," he ordered. "We will investigate." The Zalkari battle fleet consisted of 25 ships, armed with the best plasma cannons and kinetic barriers their technology could produce. They had fought raiders and pirates successfully for decades. Rexville was confident they could handle any threat. They arrived at Kexmar to find a horror beyond imagination. The Void Reapers had returned, and they were stronger than ever. The biomechanical ships moved like living things, their dark hulls absorbing energy weapons and reflecting them back at their attackers. Swarms of smaller craft poured from the larger vessels, each one guided by a collective intelligence that made them impossible to outmaneuver. "Fire all weapons," Rexthul commanded. "Protect the evacuation ships." The battle lasted exactly 43 minutes. The Zalkari plasma cannons had little effect on the Reaper ships. Their kinetic barriers were useless against weapons that seemed to bend space itself. One by one, the Zalkari vessels were destroyed or absorbed into the enemy fleet. Rexthul watched from his command bridge as half the planet's surface was consumed by the Reaper swarm. Cities that had stood for thousands of years were being dissolved and reconstructed into more enemy ships. The population was being absorbed into the collective, their bodies and minds becoming part of the enemy. "Send a warning to all Council worlds," he ordered as his ship began to fail. "The Void Reapers have returned. They are stronger than before. We cannot stop them." The message reached Earth's Strategic Command within hours. Admiral Tony Clark read the report with growing concern. The Void Reapers were adapting, learning from their previous defeat. They had spent 3 years in the dark space, studying human tactics and building new weapons. "Sir?" his aide asked. "Should we mobilize the fleet?" "The Zalkari are requesting immediate assistance." Clark looked at the tactical display showing the enemy advance. 3 more worlds had fallen in the past 6 hours. The Aquatic Collective had lost their outer colonies. The hegemony was evacuating their border systems. "Mobilize the fleet to defend Earth space only," he ordered. "We are not members of the Galactic Council anymore. This is not our fight." "But sir, if the Reapers consume the entire galaxy, they will eventually come for us too." Clark turned to face his aide. "Then maybe the Council should have thought of that before they expelled us. We warned them this would happen. We told them the Reapers would return stronger. They chose to ignore our warnings." The reports continued to pour in. The insectoid swarm was requesting emergency evacuation assistance. The crystal beings were begging for defensive technology. The small species that had voted against humanity's expulsion were facing complete extinction, but Earth's response was always the same. "We are no longer members of the Galactic Council. Please direct your requests to the appropriate Council authorities." The galaxy was learning the true cost of its decision. Without human technology, they could not mine their metals, power their cities, or treat their sick. Without human defenses, they could not protect themselves from the returning nightmare. Without human cooperation, they were alone in the darkness. The humans had walked away in silence. And now the galaxy was paying the price. High Counselor Vexthal stood in the docking bay of Earth's orbital station, his forearms trembling with exhaustion and fear. The proud Zalkari leader who had led the charge to expel humanity now looked like a broken shadow of his former self. His once bright yellow eyes were dim, and his green skin had turned pale. Behind him stood representatives from 12 different species. All of them desperate. The journey to Earth had taken them through space filled with floating debris and dead ships. 17 worlds had been consumed by the Void Reapers in just 8 months. The biomechanical horrors were growing stronger with each victory, adding the consumed populations to their collective mind and turning destroyed ships into new weapons. "Ambassador Morrison will see you now," announced the human guard, a young woman with cold, professional eyes. She led the alien delegation through clean corridors lined with humans who watched them pass without expression. The silence was uncomfortable. There were no friendly greetings, no offers of food or rest. Just quiet efficiency. They entered a conference room where President Ellen Hayes waited with her cabinet. The human leader was a small woman with gray hair and sharp eyes. She sat at the head of a polished table, her hands folded calmly in front of her. General Mike Taylor, Earth's defense minister, sat to her right. Ambassador Morrison sat to her left, the same man who had walked out of the council chambers in silence 10 months before. "High Counselor Vexthal," President Hayes said in a neutral voice, "I understand you have something to discuss." Vexthal struggled to find the right words. 3 years ago, he had spoken to humans as equals, sometimes even as inferiors. Now, he was begging for his species' survival. "President Hayes," he began, his translator crackling with emotion, "the Void Reapers have consumed 17 worlds. Our combined fleets are no match for them. We have lost millions of our people. We need your help." The human president listened without changing expression. "I see. And what makes you think we would be interested in helping?" The aquatic delegate Mortal spoke up from his portable water tank. "The Reapers will not stop with Council worlds. Eventually they will come for Earth too. We must work together to stop them." General Taylor leaned forward. "Together? You mean the way we worked together when you accused us of war crimes? The way we worked together when you expelled us from the Council? The way we worked together when you terminated all our trade agreements?" Vexthal's head dropped lower. "We were wrong. We acted out of fear and jealousy. Your people's rapid advancement made us feel threatened. We thought we could maintain galactic peace without human involvement." "You thought wrong," Morrison said. Quietly, "We warned you about the Reapers. We told you they would return. We offered to help you prepare better defenses. You told us to leave." The hegemony representative, a massive being of living stone, spoke in his rumbling voice. "We are prepared to offer full membership restoration to humanity. Complete reinstatement in the Galactic Council. We will also provide significant compensation for our mistake." President Hayes stood and walked to the window, looking out at the stars. Earth's defensive fleet was visible in the distance, sleek ships with quantum drives and advanced weaponry. They were the most powerful vessels in the galaxy, and everyone in the room knew it. "Compensation," she said without turning around. "You accused us of being a threat to galactic peace. You painted us as aggressors and warmongers. You destroyed relationships that took decades to build. And now you want to pay us to save you." The crystal being delegate, whose body sparkled with internal light, spoke in musical tones. "We understand your anger. But surely you cannot stand by while entire civilizations are destroyed. You are not a species that abandons others to genocide." President Hayes turned back to face them. "We stood by you for 3 years. We shared our technology, our knowledge, and our lives. We saved your people from plagues, defended your worlds from raiders, and asked for nothing but friendship in return. You threw that away the moment you felt threatened by our success." Vexthal stepped forward, his pride finally breaking completely. "Please, I am begging you. My homeworld is gone. My people exist only in refugee fleets. The aquatic collective has lost their ocean worlds. The hegemony is down to 3 systems. We are dying." "And whose fault is that?" General Taylor asked. "We offered to maintain the early warning network. You said human military presence was too aggressive. We offered to upgrade your defenses. You said human technology was too dangerous. We offered to coordinate joint fleet exercises. You said human tactics were too violent." Morrison stood and activated a holographic display showing the current state of the galaxy. Red zones marked areas consumed by the Reapers. Yellow zones showed systems under attack. Green zones, marking safe areas, were shrinking every day. "We gave you everything," Morrison said. "Medical technology that saved millions of lives, engineering solutions that powered your worlds, defensive systems that protected your borders, agricultural techniques that fed your populations. And you threw it all away because you were afraid of becoming irrelevant." The insectoid delegate, speaking through clicking sounds translated into words, tried again. We propose a new alliance. Humanity can lead the council. We will follow human military command. All species will contribute their resources to the war effort. President Hayes returned to her seat. You want us to clean up your mess. To save civilizations that decided they didn't want our help. To risk human lives for species that called us dangerous. We were wrong, Vexville repeated. We see that now. Humanity is not the threat. You never were. You were our protectors. And we were too proud to admit it. The room fell silent for several minutes. President Hayes looked at each alien representative in turn. She saw the desperation in their eyes, the fear that came from facing extinction. Part of her felt sympathy for them. But a larger part remembered the humiliation of expulsion, the casual dismissal of years of friendship and cooperation. We have one offer, she said finally. Unconditional surrender of all council species. Complete integration into a human-led galactic government. All technology, all resources, all military forces would be placed under human command. You would become protectorates of Earth, following human law and human leadership. The aliens exchanged glances. The terms were harsh, almost insulting. They would go from being the galaxy's rulers to being subordinate species under human control. That is unacceptable, hissed the hegemony representative. We are proud civilizations with thousands of years of history. We will not become vassals to a species that has existed in space for less than a century. President Hayes nodded as if she had expected this answer. Then you have chosen extinction over humility, that is your right. But surely there must be another way, pleaded Mortal. Some compromise that preserves our independence while allowing cooperation against the Reapers. General Taylor laughed bitterly. Compromise? Like the compromise where you kept all the benefits of human technology while denying us equal representation? Like the compromise where you used our medical advances while restricting our access to your research? Like the compromise where you expected our protection while questioning our motives? Morrison walked to the conference room door. The surrender offer expires in 24 hours. After that, Earth's borders close permanently. Any ships approaching human space will be turned away. He paused at the door and looked back at the alien delegation. You still don't understand, do you? This isn't about revenge or punishment. This is about competence. For 3 years, we held back the Void Reapers. We maintained your trade routes. We solved your technological problems. We kept your people alive. And you threw us away because you were afraid of becoming irrelevant. He opened the door, but continued speaking. You are irrelevant, you always were. You maintained the illusion of importance through committee meetings and bureaucratic procedures. When real threats emerged, you had no answers. When real solutions were needed, you had no capabilities. The silence in the room was deafening. Morrison's words hung in the air like a death sentence. Humanity didn't need the Galactic Council, he said. The Galactic Council needed humanity. And now you're going to die because you couldn't accept that simple truth. As the human delegation left the room, the aliens sat in stunned silence, finally understanding the magnitude of their mistake. The emergency session of the Galactic Council met on Nexus Prime, one of the last heavily defended worlds in Council space. The massive fortress world had been built over centuries to withstand any attack, but its defenders knew it would not hold against the Void Reapers for long. In 8 months, 47 worlds had been consumed, their populations absorbed into the growing biomechanical swarm. Ambassador Morrison sat in the observer gallery, no longer holding voting rights but present as Earth's witness to the final collapse. He watched as the surviving species argued desperately about their dwindling options. The proud chamber that had once held hundreds of representatives now contained fewer than 50. Many species had been completely wiped out. Others existed only as refugee fleets fleeing through space. The current council president was a massive insectoid being whose species had remained neutral during humanity's expulsion. His compound eyes reflected the emergency lighting as he spoke in clicking sounds that the translators converted to words. "We have received Earth's final response to our surrender proposal," he announced. "The offer has been withdrawn. All diplomatic channels with humanity are now closed." A wave of despair swept through the chamber. Vexthal, now representing the scattered remains of the Zelkari people, stood with visible effort. His once proud form was bent with exhaustion and defeat. "How many ships do the humans have?" he asked quietly. "Intelligence reports suggest over 300 vessels," replied the insectoid president, "all equipped with quantum drives and advanced weaponry. Their defensive capabilities are estimated to be 50 times greater than our remaining combined fleets." The numbers hit the chamber. Like a physical blow, the humans had built the most powerful military force in galactic history, while the council species had grown dependent on human protection. Without access to human technology, they had been unable to upgrade their own capabilities. "They could stop the Reapers," whispered Mortal from his water tank. "They have the technology and the firepower. They could save us all." "But they won't," said the hegemony representative, his stone-like form cracked and scarred from recent battles. "We showed them that we valued our pride more than their friendship. Now they are returning the favor." Morrison stood slowly. The chamber fell silent as he approached the speaker's podium. Even in their desperate state, the aliens still felt a mixture of hope and fear when a human spoke. Perhaps there was still a chance for mercy. "You still don't understand what happened here," Morrison said, his voice carrying clearly through the chamber. "This isn't about revenge or punishment. This is about the natural consequences of your choices." He looked around at the desperate faces, seeing species that had once ruled star systems now reduced to refugees and survivors. "For 3 years, humanity served this council faithfully. We shared our technology freely. We defended your worlds without asking for anything in return. We treated you as equals, even when our capabilities far exceeded yours. We asked only for friendship and cooperation." The chamber remained silent. Morrison continued. "But you couldn't accept that humanity was better at solving problems than you couldn't stand that a young species was surpassing civilizations that had existed for millennia. So you convinced yourselves that we were the threat?" Vexthal tried to speak, but Morrison held up his hand. "You accused us of aggression for building defenses against the Reapers. You called us warmongers for training your security forces. You labeled us as dangerous for developing technology that could protect the galaxy. And when the vote came, you chose fear over friendship." Morrison walked closer to the alien representatives, his footsteps echoing in the chamber. "Do you know what we did after you expelled us? We went home, we continued our research, we improved our defenses. We prepared for the Reaper return that we knew was coming. And we waited to see how long it would take you to realize your mistake." The aquatic delegate spoke up desperately. "But surely you can see that we need each other now. The Reapers threaten all intelligent life. We must work together to survive." Morrison turned to face him. "Work together? You mean the way we worked together when you voted us out of the council? The way we worked together when you accused us of violating the Sanctuary Accords? The way we worked together when you terminated our trade agreements and expelled our citizens?" The silence stretched uncomfortably. Morrison's next words fell like hammer blows. "You didn't want to work with us when times were good. You don't get to demand our help now that times are bad. You made your choice. Live with the consequences." "But people are dying," pleaded the crystal being delegate. "Entire species are being wiped out. Children, families, innocent civilians who had nothing to do with the council's decisions." Morrison's expression softened slightly, showing the first hint of emotion he had displayed. "Children died during the Zelkari plague too, until human doctors saved them. Families lost their homes to raiders until human security forces protected them. Innocent civilians faced starvation until human agricultural technology fed them. We cared about your people then. Where was your care for ours when you painted us as a threat to galactic peace?" The chamber erupted in desperate voices. "Representatives, began shouting over each other, offering trade deals, technology exchanges, territorial concessions. Anything to convince the humans to help them survive. Morrison waited for the noise to die down, then spoke his final words to the Galactic Council. The Void Reapers will consume this world within the month. Your remaining fleets will be destroyed or absorbed. Your civilizations will become footnotes in history. And it will all be because you were too proud to accept help from a species you considered inferior. He turned to leave, then paused. Humanity offered you partnership. You chose domination. Humanity offered you cooperation. You chose suspicion. Humanity offered you protection. You chose independence. You got exactly what you asked for. As Morrison walked out of the chamber, the last free government in the galaxy descended into chaos. Representatives screamed at each other, blaming everyone but themselves for the disaster they faced. Some called for suicide attacks against the Reapers. Others demanded immediate evacuation of their remaining populations. A few suggested surrendering to the Reapers in hopes of being absorbed rather than destroyed within 6 weeks. Nexus Prime fell. The fortress world's mighty defenses lasted 3 days against the Reaper swarm before being overwhelmed. The few survivors who escaped in transport ships found no safe harbor. Every world they approached was either already consumed or too afraid to offer shelter. Some refugee ships made it to the borders of human space, broadcasting desperate pleas for asylum. Earth's response was always the same. This is a restricted area. Turn back immediately or you will be fired upon. The humans meant it. When a Zelkari refugee ship tried to cross the border anyway, human patrol vessels disabled it with precise weapons fire and towed it back to neutral space. The message was clear. Earth's borders were closed permanently. A few small groups of aliens were eventually granted refugee status on human worlds, but only after extensive screening and only individuals who had voted against humanity's expulsion. They were settled on remote colonies and given basic necessities, but they would never be citizens or equals. They were living reminders of what happened when pride trumped wisdom 100 years later. Human children learned about the Galactic Council in their history classes. They studied the rise and fall of the Zelkari hegemony, the collapse of the aquatic collective, and the extinction of dozens of species who had thought themselves too important to accept human leadership. The lesson was taught simply: the galaxy was offered cooperation and chose competition. It was offered friendship and chose fear. It was offered protection and chose pride. The choice had consequences. Teachers would often end the lesson with a question: what do you think would have happened if the aliens had accepted humanity as an equal partner instead of seeing them as a threat? The answer was always the same: the galaxy would still be alive. The humans had walked away in silence, and the galaxy had paid the ultimate price for making them do so.